What's going on YouTube? So I saw Venom today and I was super touched. I had such an amazing time with it. Um, what I really liked about these movies is that they're family movies, and I hear a lot of stuff. I heard a lot of stuff going into this movie that it should have been rated R. They nerfed them, like blah blah blah. You don't really get to see the relationship between Venom and Eddie through the movie. And I was like just hearing all these things, and it was just like, oh no, please let it be good. I really love the first two. Um, and this is gonna be my spoiler review of Venom: The Last Dance. Um, at the end of the day, I love this movie. Like, there was a lot of people saying like the movie's not that good, worse than the franchise. You barely get to spend any time with Venom, like all this stuff. Starting off, they definitely did focus too much on the scientist aspect. They focused too much on the military aspect. I wanted to see Venom and Eddie working on themselves, working together as a team, and figuring out how to get it. At the end of the movie, watching the movie, I was like, oh, like I wish they didn't do this. I wish like they'd speed this stuff up. I don't want to I want to get to the action. When that third act hits, you know it hits, and it is super fun. Characters you've known for 30 seconds, you're like, oh no. You don't know any of these characters. You don't know any of their names. But they're like, oh, these are really cool. This is cool. They just died, blah blah blah. Like it's like, oh, look at all these new characters. Look at all these symbiotes. Like this is so cool. And then they're fighting this other alien creature, and this is so cool. And they start dying, and my dad's like, oh no, blah blah blah. Like, and it's just like you get really sucked in the third act. You don't know these characters, and you're like, oh man. And then that one that girl doctor scientist, and she gets the symbiote. We're like, oh, I knew that was gonna happen. And then it was just like it was really fun, an amazing third act. I i was having a blast. I was so sucked in the third act that it kind of like made up for the first parts that were a little bit slower in my opinion. And that was another thing. People were really crapping on the runtime, like, oh, it's only an hour and a half. This is gonna suck. Blah blah blah. But what had happened was the first two acts went by so quickly that it kind of worked. Where the meat of the movie was this third act that was a big spectacle, and it was amazing, and there was a full character development through the trilogy. Um, and it just worked out so wonderfully. And all the parts that I didn't like moved pretty fastly, and by the time the third act, I kind of forgot about it or have forgiven it. Um, I know I really liked the third act. The third act was wonderful. Another thing that I didn't have a problem with was the family. Like they just wanted to see Area 51, and they're a little kooky, and Eddie was kind of like, oh, and Venom just let his character show. He loved to dance. He was singing along. Like Venom seemed be very human in this movie. He was very human in this movie. Um, and the one thing that he really wanted to do was to see the Statue of Liberty. He just wanted to go to New York through the entire movie. He just wanted to survive and hang out with his best friend, and go see the Statue of Liberty. And that's what made it so heart wrenching. Um, it was it was just heart wrenching at the end of the third act, and you're just like, dude, the sacrifice was crazy. It was absolutely wonderful. It was emotional. I was sitting there crying, and I'm like, I'm not crying, you're crying. Stop. I was having such a good time, and it was such a heart wrenching thing. And one thing I will say, in film, I hate flashbacks. They're horrible. I hate when films do flashbacks, especially in TV shows. Like flashbacks will ruin a film or an episode for me, or even an entire series. If they're too heavily on flashbacks, I don't like it. They use these emotional flashbacks to really phone it in. They were showing us stuff from the first movie through the second movie, and I'm just sitting there like, oh, my heart is breaking right now for this fictional character. And I'm just like, he just wants to be with his best friend, but he's gonna sacrifice himself. And it was just wonderful. And yeah, like the family, like they were good. I didn't have any problems with the family being there. I it was kind of just some extra stuff that wasn't there, except for the the conversations Eddie had with the little guy, the little boy. That was pretty important, and I feel like they were setting something up with Venom being gone, which led to everything that ended up. I even looked at my dad. I'm like, this is getting really emotional. Is one of these guys gonna die? And sure enough, Venom does that sacrifice to save Eddie, and it was absolutely wonderful. Um, some things I were disappointed with. I really wanted to know who this guy calling on the shots was. And I'm like sitting there geeking out. I'm like, yo, is this is that Norman Osborn? Like Venom is trying to go to New York. They got this mystery figure calling on the shots with the military of this federal, like maybe it's Noblin, but maybe in this universe it's like, Osborn, he's calling the shots. Maybe he's the leader of the Dark Avengers. Maybe he's got the Iron Man suit. Like, who knows who that guy was. Um and maybe, like, maybe that's the thing where, like, they make the connection to Spider-Man. Maybe Eddie goes to um in the post credit, maybe Eddie goes to the starts working for the Daily Bugle because he got fired down there, and he comes up here and becomes like goes big with the Daily Bugle. And then J. Jonah Jameson's like, yo, give me pictures of Spider-Man, and he's like, there's a Spider-Man in this universe. I know the kid from the other universe. What about who's the one here? You know, and like, I was expecting something like that for the post credit scenes, and obviously we got the no mid credit scene, and I feel like the post credit scene was kind of useless. I feel like the credits were so long, and we're just sitting there in this theater for the credits, and it's just like the bar owner who was nothing in the movie came out and was just running and yelling, and then they do go to a glimpse of the canister that Scream came from, and I'm like, okay, I mean that's cool, but we already seen Scream. Like, we already know what character was in it, what was in there. If they're gonna do that, like, they could have shown like that little symbiote of Venom, you know, and they could have give like a little hope for Secret Wars. But then I also feel like they would have took out some of the stuff, the emotional aspects of Venom dying. But then it's a post credit scene, so anything could happen in a post credit scene without it like fully destroying. And I don't know. I was like, that was really random, and we waited a long time. I feel like the credits went on a little bit longer than they needed to be. Though there was a lot of information, and I did enjoy some of the songs on there. Though Null, through the entire movie, I felt was placed very well. I mean, he was the opening of the movie. We got his character understanding very, very quickly. Um, he was super important to this entire story, and he was stuck in the one area through the entire movie, and he does come off as like a badass. So he does. I feel like they are setting something up for him. I did like the setup for him, and he was even like, "Hey, I'm stronger now. Like, your lethal protector is gone. Like, when I get out, like, I'm gonna be taking over everything really easy." And like, I kind of interested in see what happens. I feel like they placed him in three different major parts: beginning, middle-ish, and end. And then the post-credit scene, I feel like we saw a lot of him, and I feel like it really worked out. I feel like they showed him a little too much in the trailers. but I feel like it actually worked out because if we saw him just in the movie, I feel like it kind of would have been like a shock and like an overwhelming shock. So it was actually really nice, and I agree with the decision to put him in the trailers. I think that actually really worked out. Um, Other than that, like I had a blast with it. I really liked this movie. Um, I don't want to say best of the trilogy. I'll make a little ranking down on my YouTube in a little bit, but I definitely had a lot of fun with it. Definitely hit the emotional cues. Um, I had a lot of fun with this trilogy, and if they bring it back in Secret Wars, I'll be super happy. If not, that's okay too. You know, I feel like this is a perfect ending for a character. And he's not in like an Iron Man character where he has to come back, but he's a really good character, and I really like the relationship they have. So that's my